Hello everyone, it's Attacker72 here, and for today, Sonic X Shadow Generations, with Shadow's story now given a lot more to do, from brand new levels, new mechanics, new powers, and most notably, brand new bosses. We now have a total of 11, technically 12 bosses in Sonic Shadow Generations, and with 6 new bosses in this game, that pretty much gives us a decent amount to talk about. So, welcome guys, we're going to be ranking all 11 Sonic X Shadow Generation bosses from worst to best. I was initially going to rank all Shadow Generation bosses, but given that this came bundled with the original game and all that, and with the original bosses in that game pretty much having some decent challenge, I wanted to rank all of them going from worst to best. So before we start, this is obviously my thoughts and opinions about this. You can disagree with me all you like, and second, I'm going to be ranking these from how challenging they are, how fun the bosses are, and whether or not it's worth the effort and challenge, and I really hope you guys enjoy this video. And so with that, let's go ahead and rank all Sonic X Shadow Generations bosses from worst to best. At number 11, we got ourselves our very first boss and also first rival fight. So it isn't really a boss battle, it's more so a rival fight, but it's pretty much a boss fight either way. This is our first boss and rival fight to face off against, so it's a little unfair for me to put this at like the very bottom. But let's be honest, there are some better bosses to face off against that gives off a bit of an easier but more so a great challenge at the same time. For Metal Sonic, it's a little bit of a mix of a chase. There, instead of trying to avoid Metal Sonic from Sonic CD, this time you have to chase and attack him. What's even interesting is that this is the classic variation of Metal Sonic and not the original modern version of the character. So it is kind of weird we don't have the modern version of Metal Sonic, but I don't mind this. So anyways, you basically have to run away from fallen platforms while also trying to hit Metal Sonic at the same time. There, it'll try to hit you with its claws, but once you attack him, you'll be then able to hit him with an attack, and that's about it. However, you can actually attack him when he's trying to charge up his attacks, so it's kind of like a mix of a nice way of fast pace. So it is a nice first rival fight to go off with, but it's really not great, to be honest. It's sort of like okay to go off, and there are better bosses throughout the list as you will see. So this is why I'm going to be putting Metal Sonic as our first, and if anything, the last place of this boss ranking. At number 10, we got ourselves the Dead Egg Robot, this time our actual first boss in Sonic Generations. This boss consists of a few things. It does act the same way as the original Sonic titles bosses, where in the Dead Egg Robot, you didn't really have any rings, so if you get hit, it's pretty much game over, and you have to hit its weak point from the backside. It pretty much retains that, except with a couple things. You now have rings, and while at first, the first two phases, with the first two hits, you'll be able to hit him from the backside, but then you'll be able to hit him from its head once we get to the top of the Dead Egg. Once you get to the top, you now takes in a more different perspective. In order to hit from the head, you have to press some buttons in order to summon some bombs. Wait for Death Robot's arms to hit it, and once it's done, you'll then be able to spin dash onto its arm and then hit its head a few more times, and boss is fully complete. It's a nice refreshing take of a really classic boss while also having a new modern take onto it. This was pretty cool as well, and given that this is our first real boss, I put this at like number 10. But as I mentioned with Metal Sonic, there are better bosses that are better than what we have here. Now at number 9, we got ourselves the final boss of Sonic Generations, the Time Eater. So we went from like the first boss being the Dead Egg Robot, now to the Time Eater itself. Now here's the problem. I don't mind a final boss that is challenging and also easy. However, this Time Eater boss was, if anything, clustered and confusing to do, because all you have to do is hit its core by dashing towards it. You'll occasionally be switching from 3D and 2D segments of both classic and modern Sonic, and since you are in super form, the big challenge is trying to get your ring count up that isn't going to head into zero, because given that with every Supersonic fight, the ring count always depletes all the way to zero. The problem with this boss fight is that it is clustered. There is a lot of things happening at the same time, from floating islands to, the Time Eater trying to hit you with its hands, and then most notably, a lot of golden gears that the rings are just sort of hard to see at all. The only way you can get more rings phase is if you switch to the classic Sonic segments, to which that's pretty much all you have to do. And you also have to hit a lot of different islands just by using classic Sonic's move, and then after about a few more times, you'll then be able to hit its final attack with both classic and modern Sonic, and oh yeah, it does shoot out some homing attacks, to which, you know, good luck having to hear your Sonic's friends say that there is a homing attack coming near you, because they say that a lot, to be honest. Next up, we got number 8, Perfect Chaos. Now, first of all, I love the modern take of Perfect Chaos. The blue coloring on the water, and then the green veins coming in, and the core itself. That is a really great Perfect Chaos boss. Now, the first 2 phases, you'll have to dash in the water. Now, your boost gauge can deplete really faster if you're going on water, but once you get to the dash pads and then does a few more homing attacks, there you'll be able to come near Perfect Chaos, and once you're near Perfect Chaos, boost towards the core, and once you hit its head, you'll then be able to hit damage of him. Do it as 2 more times, and then we get to the third phase, which I do think sort of ducks this down a few points because of that alone. You see, this third phase, you have to do a bit of platforming. Now, I don't mind platforming in my games. Mario is my go-to platformers, and Sonic is pretty great with platforming at times, but Perfect Chaos's final phase having to deal with platforming just feels just okay-ish, and it does kind of remove the song of Opening Your Heart, which, I mean, that is a great song from Crush 40, so this is kind of why I'm putting this at like number 8. It does duck it down a few points just because of that final phase alone, but the first 2 phases, it's great, fast-paced, and dynamic. It is a really good boss to go through. Up next, we got our very first Shadows Generations boss, that being the Bio-Lizard. Throughout the first 2 acts, you'll be able to go and learn a lot of Shadows abilities from the Doom Spear and the Doom Blast. This one right here, the Bio-Lizard, takes all the elements of the new abilities that you learn. So the first phase, the Bio-Lizard will just be trying to hit you from its tail and then from its head, and then it'll try to hit you with its energy balls and trying to shoot at you. But once it's tired out, you'll then be able to home an attack onto the tail, and then once there, you'll be able to hit its main core on the back of it. Afterwards, after about a few hits, it then gets to its second phase, where it then grows arms. So its arms tries to hit you, but then you'll be able to dodge it, and then you have to like spam a lot of attacks in order to hit the arms one by one, and then you have the home and attack from the fallen debris, and then hit the core. Its final phase, this time it gets to the corner of the wall, where this time it tries to hit you with a lot of spears, to which you have to use Doom Spears a few more times, and then tries to hit you with one large beam. However, Shadow uses Chaos Control and then use a few more homing attacks and then hits the core. This is a great introduction of Shadow's bosses, and it really gives out a nice vibe on what's to come for the upcoming bosses in Shadow's story. Speaking of Shadow, we then get to our second rival fight, that being Shadow the Hedgehog. There, you'll have to race on the Space Colony arc. Now, unlike the original Sonic Adventure 2 boss, where you have to hit him a couple times, there it's basically a race to the Chaos Course, to which you have 2 gauges. You have one for Sonic, and you have one for Shadow. There, you have to fill up 2 gauges from the Chaos Course, and before Shadow does. If Shadow gets it, he'll then use Chaos Spears to hit you, so you have to dodge it as soon as you can. However, if Sonic gets it, you'll then be able to use a dash attack, to which you have to hit a few meteors to hit Shadow, and once he's stunned a little bit, you'll then be able to go very close to him and then deplete his ring count all the way to 0, finishing the rival fight. And it's pretty hype when you have Live and Learn put into it. I do think this is a little bit similar to the Super Perfect Chaos fight, as in the first few parts of the boss fight is great, but then the ending kind of felt underwhelming. Like, meteors is not really the last thing I would imagine of Hidden Shadow at all. If anything, I do think it's a little underwhelming. So if anything, I would have preferred like sort of like a clash attack, so like kind of like what Sonic and Blaze did in Sonic Rush. That would have been a cool way of using both Sonic and Shadow's abilities all together. Though what does give this a few points is that now with Shadow's story coming out and having this boss fight being recontextualized, given brand new context of why we had to fight Shadow to begin with, I do think this is a pretty good boss fight, if anything. So that's why I'm putting this at my number 6 favorite. Alright, now we get to the top 5, and now for number 5, we got ourselves our third and final rival fight, Silver the Hedgehog. This time, it's not really a race, it's more so trying to attack Silver this time. There, Silver uses his psychokinesis to try and hit you, though as soon as the fight starts, he'll use a car at you, but you'll actually be able to home an attack if you are quick enough to hit him. Once then, you'll be able to use a few bits of debris, to which you have the dodge and then hit it. Once he gets a bunch of debris and cars, you'll have to home an attack as soon as possible and then hit Silver a few more times. Then for its final phase, he'll then uses a huge boulder of debris and then it tries to hit you while trying to use broken parts of the building to hit you as well. But once you get very close to Silver, you'll then use one final hit and there the boss is finished. That is a great way to end off rival fights, and I do think this is a little bit more better than Shadow's version, where Shadow's version is where Shadow's boss is more like a racing rather than an actual fight. This Silver boss instead actually gives you a bit of a challenge and also is a nice way to end up rival fights overall. At number 4, we then get ourselves the return of Mephiles the Dark. This time, it consists of the Doom Morph ability that you gained in Shadow's story. There, the Doom Morph comes in because Mephiles covers the entire floor in like some purple goo. Once there, he'll try to hit you with his attacks, but once you'll then use Doom Morph, you'll then hit him like a few more times, and then it then gets to the second phase, to which he'll, you have more purple goo, but Mephiles goes into his monstrous form, to which the Doom Morph has to hit its core a couple more times. You can also use Chaos Control as well in order to stop him from using its beams, and then for its final attack, Mephiles tries to clone himself and then hit Shadow all at once, but Shadow uses Chaos Control and then does one final attack. This is our final regular boss for Shadow's story before we get to the final boss, so it is a nice way to end it off, along with a really amazing reintroduction of Mephiles, a good way of using the Doom Morph, which admittedly it does take some time to get used to control, but once you get the hang of him, this is not one of my favorite bosses, but it doesn't get any better than with number 3. As number 3, this is Metal Overlord. Now, Metal Overlord, you now have the Doom Surf ability, and with the Doom Surf spin, you have to hit Metal Overlord with its cores. You have to dodge a few lasers from time to time, and then there's also like these dash pads, to which once you get to the dash pads, you'll then go through some rainbow rings and then hit the core that way. It is a really fast-paced and dynamic fight, along with what I made up from Crush 40 playing in the background, that I never really thought would come back in a boss fight like this, along with the phenomenal voice acting from Ray Chase. You also got the second phase, to which now the atmosphere becomes more stormy and all, with the water torpedo and the sea. You have to hit Metal Overlord a few more times with some debris and then dodging some rockets at the same time, and then once then it'll then use Chaos Control to hit Metal Overlord once and for all, and then hit one final attack with a quick time event. That is a really good boss, and with the water, it has a mix of challenge and water, and it does take a lot of precision of, trying to hit it at the right moment. At number 2, we got ourselves the last regular boss for Sonic Generations, that being the Egg Dragoon. If I recall, comes from Sonic Unleashed. Sonic Unleashed's Egg Dragoon consists of ice attacks and a bunch of lasers. There, you have to chase the Egg Dragoon by hitting its main core, 2 cores, the head and then I guess you can say the main core on the chest. Once there, you have to dodge a lot of ice attacks and lasers. And when you get to the 2D segments, you have to dodge a few more ice attacks, and then the Egg Dragoon tries to crush you with its walls, to which you can wall jump and then hit the head. There's also a few segments where Eggman can summon out, can summon a bit of a free-falling segment, which you have to dodge a lot of lasers and then hit the core that way. It is a nice, great challenge as a way to, learn from all the mistakes you learn from all the acts and levels that you have to go through. You have to dodge so much, but it's really fun to go through, especially for a final regular boss before heading to a pretty underwhelming final boss. And now we get to my number 1 most favorite, to which if you go through the process of elimination, I think it's pretty obvious that it is the Devil Doom. Now, I did say it was technically 12 because it does have 2 phases. But anyways, the first phase, it consists of Devil Doom, to which the first phase, it does act pretty similarly to the Metal Overlord fight, where you have to hit a few bits of debris onto the water while having to dodge a lot of obstacles at the same time. And then its second phase, it consists of the Doom Morph, to which you have a lot of platforming to do, and like I mentioned with the Doom morph, it does take a lot of precision and a lot of timing to get all the swinging right, but once you'll be able to hit its main core, being the eye, you'll then be able to get to the final phase of the fight, being Neo Devil Doom. Seeing a second form of Devil Doom is great. With a brand new rendition of All Hail Shadow playing, it is a hype boss fight, along with the new and final ability of Shadow, the Doom Wings, to which you have to fill up your ring gauge, but it's not as clustered as with the Time Eater, where you can barely see anything. This time, you have to dodge some walls and then collect rings, and then most notably dodge these like blue worm things that Devil Doom sends at you, but once you do, you would then be able to mash attack on its main core of the eye, and then and you have to do this a few times. It tries to hit you a couple times with its main head, so you just have to avoid that, but this is a really hype final boss. A great music, great use of Shadow's Doom Wings, and if anything, a good way to end up Shadow's story once and for all. But those are all the bosses in Sonic X Shadow Generations. Some were great, some were okay, some were mid, and some were pretty downers, but then you got to the ones that are challenging, hype, and also fun at the same time. But I want to know your thoughts and opinions down below about this. Which of these Sonic X Shadow Generations bosses are your favorite? I want to know all your thoughts and opinions down below about this, and so with that, leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell for more videos, follow my Twitter, and I'll see you guys next time. And remember this, once a legend, always a legend.